So last year on the show, we got into the story of the New Hampshire Theatre Project, a local and intensely community-minded theater of which I am now a board member, one of the many ways in which this podcast and my life have become sort of a feedback loop. Founded by Genevieve Aichele, the theater's now in transition as Genevieve gets ready to step down and artistic director Catherine Stewart takes over. Back when I first got involved in all of this, the talk of transition was also tied up in a conversation about a physical place, the black box theater that the New Hampshire Theatre Project calls home. Or, used to call home, and will most likely call home again. That part of the conversation about physical place, we will table that and come back to it later. But the conversation about the theater's sense of self has continued during and been complicated by the pandemic. So I called up Genevieve and Catherine to talk through what's happened so far this year and what's happening next. You're also going to hear a little bit from Suzana Mihajlica. She was originally supposed to join me in this conversation as the podcast co-host, but she got a little busy with work and couldn't make it. But I still wanted to sort of pick her brain about the conversation I was going to have, in part because, as we established in the last episode of the show, Suzana and I have the same brain. But also because, as I alluded to in the last episode and will again in this one, I kind of lightly absconded from some of my nonprofit duties this summer when I started my new job and Christy started hers. The truth is, this conversation was partly just to catch me up. Like I said, feedback loop. One thing that I'm going to talk to Catherine and Genevieve about how the theater is continuing to try and survive in this. What would you ask them first? If you were trying to, tell that story, put on your marketing hat again, what would your first question to them be?
Oh, Zach, that's a hard question.
Let's go back to the beginning of all of this, right? When did you know the pandemic was going to be a big deal? And how did you initially start thinking about it in terms of the theater?
We were in the middle of the storytelling festival. So for me, everything kind of revolves around St. Patrick's Day because we had a concert scheduled with Sarah Bowen and Ken Allen. And Sarah decided that she didn't feel safe and she wanted to cancel her performance. And that was really the first notice that, this is something really big. We ended up having Diane's performance the Saturday night before, which was the last show we did in the theater since then. And we only had a few people and everyone was just numb. I mean, nobody knew what to think. And then we ended up canceling everything else. And I think when I look back on that moment that night, there were a number of people who donated their tickets, but decided they didn't feel safe and didn't want to come. And there were probably about, I don't think you were even there that night, Catherine. There were probably about a dozen of us in the theater. And we were all just, well, you know how you feel when something happens, a tragedy or a disaster, you feel raw, but at the same time you feel really alive. All your senses are alive, and you have no idea what's happening next. And I remember feeling that way in that moment. And then after everyone left, bursting out in tears and saying, "Will we be able to open the theater again?" And it was a pretty intense moment.
It's like one of those times where it happens really slowly and really quickly or at the same time, because from about kind of March 8th, between March 8th and 12th, I was in Baltimore at a training conference. And so a lot of our communication was just via email, just checking in. Oh, we're starting to see this organization's doing this is what's happening. And I came back on the 12th and that's when we were really starting to have conversations. And we were thinking ahead to our next productions as well, because we would have been opening our devised piece Anthropocene in at the end of April, beginning of May, which was crazy because we were really just launching into the rehearsals for that, and because it's a piece of theatre that was going to be made in the room with people, it's almost like it just never happened. There's not even a script yet, because it was going to get made in those 6 weeks. And then we had another production scheduled for June as well. And those first few days when we got past the storytelling festival, we realized that every day was like a reanalysis, I think, of the next thing. And we had a Seco Sessions in there as well, and we just kept being one hard choice after another. Classes all cancelling, and then Elephant in the Room, and slowly just the calendar emptied.
So I remember the board meeting where we kind of like all agreed that we were going to just cancel everything. And it's amazing actually how fast we got to that point. You know, like, it's crazy to remember that it's all still in March, right? That we went from thinking this is maybe going to be a thing that's going to be a problem for a month or two, to thinking this is going to be a problem for a very long time. And it's crazy that we accepted it and got there just like as a nation, some of us, that quickly. But I remember that. So once that happened and you had to kind of deal with the loss of that, I guess probably at the same time, what were the first sort of moves that you were making?
I know artistically the first move we made, or that is in my head now, because I'm also like, well, we also cancelled our whole summer festival and the summer camps, but that didn't happen at that point. We waited longer. But the move that happened in that board meeting was, that I think about, was our marketing director, Janice Hastings, saying, well, how can we decide anything? We just don't know what this is yet. And me turning around and saying, well, let's do that. Let's make a piece of theatre and we'll call it We Don't Know What This Is Yet. And so right from the off, as we were cancelling and moving away, we also knew that continuing to make theatre had to stay central to what we were doing. Again, what did that look like? What did that even mean? The thing we knew was New Hampshire Theatre Project has a great history of docudrama, working with the community to gather and tell important stories. And we thought, well, we go back to our roots. We just start gathering stories, and someday we'll tell them. I'm not saying that was certainly not a let's say like keep the theatre afloat with this idea but it was the creative or artistic part central that I remember. I remember that moment.
Well, you know, I mean, and we'll get into this, but like the theater has had like some success in terms of like people have still continued to give money, and you were able to like negotiate a PPP loan, right? Like that happened. So that stuff happened, but I think one of the reasons that the theater was successful with some of that logistical stuff was because there was still artistic purpose happening at the same time. If you were just trying to keep the organization alive for the sake of keeping the organization alive, it probably would have been a little harder to do some of that legwork. But you had this motivating force, and that idea, the idea for We Don't Know What This Is Yet, it kind of did come first. Like that was already, you know, I remember when you first started talking about it, that was already in your head before you had to start really doing the hard work of like I don't even know what it's like to do one of those PPP loans, but I can't imagine it's fun.
Well, it's a lot of paperwork, but you know, we were very fortunate to have help from the bank and a lot of resources like the State Arts Council and the New Hampshire Humanities, and even the recent NERF grants through the state. They made the process so streamlined. They were so eager to help. And the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, I mean, all of them really pivoted and reached out, which was really helpful. I was going to say, one of the things that felt really important to us artistically and I remember because Catherine, you kept saying this a lot, was we don't have to jump in and do something for the sake of doing it. Let's keep our mission in mind. And all around us, a lot of other theaters were, oh, we've got to keep going this way, or we've got to do stuff online, or we have to do this, and we have to do that. And we were like, no, let's take this step back. Let's take this moment and use it, and use this pause. And interestingly, we're in a transition with the organization anyway as we work on succession planning. So it actually gave us an opportunity to step back a little bit and really look at our mission. And as we did that, you know, the idea of we don't know what this is yet, which was so exciting to people that we raised $10,000 for that. Actually, it's more than that now because we've had other money come in just for this project, which is totally unknown. But what people wanted was that we were acknowledging we don't know what this is yet. And we kept, once a month, we'd send out a letter to donors and patrons and say, here's where we are. We're struggling just like you are. And one person sent me an email. It really surprised me. He said, thank you for that leadership. In this time when it seemed like no one was leading. And leading isn't, well, we're racing off to do this or that. Leading is acknowledging where we are and that we're being thoughtful and that we're moving forward very, very slowly, and people appreciated that. Yeah, it was actually an odd opportunity for us. I think now is actually a little bit harder time as we say, okay, it's been 6 months and this is not going away soon. And all around us, theaters, performing arts are crumbling. I just read an article yesterday that said in the entertainment industry, 47% of people have lost their jobs. It's the largest loss across any job sector is in the entertainment industry. And that's pretty sobering. So now it's what's the long haul?
We came together with our board, advisory members, staff and artists in May. And we had a gathering on Zoom that brought our values to the center. We reaffirmed them in that moment. And it wasn't about a big public show or it was really about saying, first, look at how this organization has changed. Look at who's now actually around the table, because some of you haven't even had a chance to meet each other yet. But also, here's what is central. We've been around for 30 years. This is what we know. This is what we do. And I feel like it was so important for us to secure and cement that first. Because how can we take a next step if we don't know our foundation is solid, if we don't even know what foundation we're standing on? And that was a really powerful moment and has continued to inform every conversation we've had since about knowing what our guiding lights are and how that's not a static thing it shouldn't be a static thing in any organization, but it certainly isn't in a non-profit organization when you are mission driven and you're saying this is what we do, this is what we stand up for, this is what we mean in our community. And I think there was something powerful for us to do that in May when we were really so many people were feeling so lost.
During this pause, and during this meeting you're talking about, the sort of clarification of values and everything, during this time, was there anything that surprised you? Was there a way in which the organization or you had changed that you hadn't really been aware of until it was spoken aloud?
Well, I guess I'll answer first because for me, I am the founding, the last of the founding members that's still connected with the organization. And I remember that May meeting where we had so many of the artists, the company resident artists. We had a lot of new board members and advisory members. And there was a moment when something came up, a question, and I found myself getting very stressed. And suddenly I thought, wait, I don't have to make this decision. This is no longer on my shoulders, but it is on the shoulders of this entire group. And we're all in this together. Just talking about that makes me tear up. And it was just such a tremendous relief. And that sense of joy could happen in the midst of this crazy pandemic is still astonishing to me.
I think that in particular, was also a realization for me, because it is my belief that leadership is again not about, it's not about standing at the front of the group always and charging forward with everyone behind, and this organization only will survive and thrive with that collective power. But I'm also, because if we are an organization that is there to be a mirror to the society and the community that we live in, we have to be a community in ourselves in order to do that. And the collaboration and deliberation that we would have in the rehearsal room also needs to happen in the boardroom and the office, and when we're standing in the lobby with a drink, like that's, or when we're in a rehearsal, when we're in a workshop with individuals. It is always collaborative, but that takes a sense of letting go as well. And in a time where we have no control over anything, it's such a natural reaction to want to grab at something and take control of it. But actually we had to, whilst we had to each take a part of the control of the organization and not have just one person say, I've got this on my back. We would never survive. The other thing that I'm thinking about out of that time is again the fact that we are going through transition, and we're going through succession. We're going through leadership change, and have been for a number of years. That actually also seems like a blessing in the current moment, because we were already not holding too tightly to the ways we were working, how things had been, the way things were. Jen, on the very first day that I started as the associate artistic director here, said to me, if I ever say, well, that's just the way we do it, in response to something you ask, to a question you ask about something, that's not a good enough answer, and you have to push back and say, well, why? Let's talk about that. And I feel like that has also led us through this period, and will continue to lead us through that. Always asking, why do we do it? Why is this the best way for us to do it? Is this best for the people involved? Is this best for our benefactors? Is this best for our stakeholders? And so there's a lot of letting go, whilst also being able to make strong choices. And sometimes those strong choices are to do nothing, or to wait, to just know when to pause before you say the next line, right? So much of our theatre work, I think, is also helping how we do our work right now.
I do think that maybe that meeting that we were all in there, in retrospect, was probably so much more beneficial for a lot of people in a lot of ways than we ever even realized at the time. You're talking about that image of kind of just like seeing all the faces on a Zoom call, which is something we're very familiar with at this point, so we don't think about how it can be a powerful image. But the image of all of those faces and that sort of diffused responsibility, and that being an image of that, I think that did a lot. So my other question for you that I will incorporate into what I talked to Genevieve and Catherine about is the theme for the theater project this year is, what are you waiting for? Mm-hmm. When you hear that, how do you hear it? Like positive, negative? What does it make you think of? Do you feel attacked, or do you feel inspired?
What are you waiting for? I think it's a very, what's the word? It's not provocative, because it's racy, but it provokes you. So is that provocative? Is that how that word is also used?
I think that's what provocative means. I think it does have I think it has like racy connotations, but I think provocative's like denotative meaning is what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So thought-provoking. Let's go with that. That one's. But I really do, because it's a question. It's a very direct question. And I think generally, like, that's one thing I like about New Hampshire Theater Project. Like, they generally always ask a question. I don't know if that's common with theater themes, or people are just like, the theme is orange this year. But I always like that they have this question, because again, like, they're engaging with their audience, they're engaging with their community. And so, you know, last year's was, can one person make a difference? But putting the you into the question, like, what are you waiting for? I think it's very powerful. I think that, you know, it's a theme that makes you think about things that are happening in your life. And right now we are all kind of just holding our breath for the pandemic to be over, for the election to happen, for, you know, just so many things that are up in the air right now. And you kind of unwittingly pause your life while you're just waiting for things to go back to normal. And so, yeah, I think it's a very thought-provoking question of what are you waiting for, and why are you waiting at all? Like, what is it that you want to do with your day, or what is it you want to do with your life, or what is it you want to say to somebody? And I love it. I think it's, I don't know if it's positive or negative. I just think it's very powerful.
Okay, so let's move forward now to sort of what's happening now with the theater. I want to talk about this idea of what are you waiting for, which I think is such a great theme. But how did that come about, and what are the challenges that you face now that we're sort of opening again?
To be an organization that works under a yearly theme is really empowering, actually, because we are never just talking about what the public face when we deal with a theme. We are asking ourselves as a board staff, you know, artist-led, collaborative organization, that question or those topics, it's in what we do behind the scenes as much as it's in front of the curtain. And so last year we were saying, can one person make a difference? And we were able to reflect on the difference that Genevieve has made to the community and to this organization, and then to other individuals who have informed that work. And what does it mean to add another person to that team? And what does it mean for a donor to say, I am also part of this, or an audience member to say, I can also make a difference, not only to this organization, but to the wider community, because I've been inspired by something I saw at New Hampshire Theatre Project. This year, we were working with a whole other theme, because you've got to also remember a theatre organization has its programming, at least main stage programming, decided a year in advance, 2-3 years if you're really doing good. You know, we're thinking about larger celebrations, what's coming down the line. We're already thinking about plays that we'd want to see on our stage in 2023, 2025. So in that February-March area, we were getting to a point of solidifying a season, and then everything stops. And everything kind of was pushed to the side, because we knew that season wasn't going to serve its purpose. Hopefully we get to bring back that theme at some point, because I think it was a good one, but it didn't match this year. And I was actually sitting again discussing with Janice Hastings, our marketing director, about what do we need to be talking about right now. And we really realized that a lot of what we were doing was thinking about the who, what, where, why, when of our organization. That actually those 5 questions are maybe a kind of good framework as an organization goes through transition. And last year really was the who. Who needs to be involved? Who's around the table? Who can do something? As we discussed, we thought, what needs to be discussed now? Everybody is talking about how time has just changed. We don't know how to measure it. We don't know how long anything is. We don't know whether we've been in isolation for a week or 6 weeks. We don't, and we feel like we're maybe treading water in our own lives as well. We don't know whether we're going to be able to travel to meet our loved ones over the holidays. We don't know what future celebrations will look like. We don't know what this country is going to look like. So it feels like time is standing still, but we know it's not. Every day that passes is another day that we can and should be living, experiencing, meeting people, learning something new. And so that really is the when. When are we going to do it? When will this happen? When will we be back in a room together? When will we do that thing we've been waiting to do, that we really were desperate to do, that we should have done before March 13th? And so the question of what are you waiting for seemed to be the perfect way to frame questions for the organization. What are we waiting for? This change we wanted to make? Why not do it? This bold gesture, this idea, what are we waiting for? And then also, how can we inspire our community to do that too, whilst also acknowledging that we are in a tremendously hard time. And sometimes all we have to do is wait. And that's okay as well.
I think one of the things about the themes the past couple of years have been that they have multiple meanings. So when you say, can one person make a difference? The question is, can one person make a difference? Can one person make a difference? And the same, it's really true for this one, because whenever I think about what are you waiting for, are we saying, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I mean, it has all these multiple meanings, all of which are relevant.
It definitely spoke to me when I first heard it, as a person who I think has both like taken a lot of action in this time and also like not taken a lot of action, you know, and like you're always wondering, am I doing enough? And I kind of liked that when I heard that question, the answer to me was no, you're not doing enough. And I also appreciate the kind of double meaning. I don't think until this conversation it really occurred to me that the themes were also questions you were asking yourselves as, you know, as artists and as an organization.
Yeah,
so,
and I did, just to jump in there, like, yeah, of course we're going to bring the idea of drama to the stage, right? The idea that we or theatre, or that the arts is so integrated in what we do, so we can't help ourselves but have themes. And then what Jen just did there was a perfect exercise in that an actor would do when looking at a line on a script and saying, how do I want to say that phrase? And look, there isn't just one possibility to that phrase if it's good writing, and even if it's not.
One question that Suzana kind of brought up was she joked that it sounded like a John F. Kennedy question. She said, you know, we know what our community has done for the New Hampshire Theatre Project. Like, as board members and kind of seeing like the donations and the support and everything, we know what the community has been able to do for us. But what can we do for the community? What do you think is what are your kind of like marching orders for giving back now and for helping other people get through this? What do you think, if you had to put it into words, what would you say you're going to try to do?
Well, one of the things that I always like to say about New Hampshire Theatre Project, and it's only been recently that I feel that people are starting to understand it, is that we are more than just a theater company, and we are about a lot more than entertainment. We feel that theater is an art form that is rooted in the community and that has an obligation to use our skills and talents to give back to that community. So our Elephant in the Room program is 4 years old. And after the first 2 years, it was very successful. And we had a meeting with a number of stakeholders, funders and artists and social service people who had helped us. And we all decided that while it would be laudable to try to take the program virtual, it wasn't right. It was so successful as a live program, and that's what we wanted to continue with it. And now we've had to take it virtual. And it's it's difficult in the sense that it's all new technology, but it allows us to reach out to our community in a much larger way. So, the city of Portsmouth has had a person, a gentleman who worked for the city, recently died of suicide. And with the isolation in COVID-19, suicide rates are up, skyrocketing in all fields. So we reached out to the city of Portsmouth and said, would you like us to do our Elephant in the Room program? And the city said, actually, much to my surprise at how quickly they jumped on it, yes. And so we're offering that. It's a free service that we're giving. We're also doing another one on the opioid crisis, and we're receiving some funding for that, but we're also using our own resources. And several of the artists are donating their time. They want their honorariums donated back into the program. So I feel that that's one of the ways that we're really working to do that. We just did the Fairy House tours. They decided to cancel and they went virtual. And so we put together a 10-minute performance of the fairies. Catherine did an incredible job of filming it, and in the garden. And it's just a magical piece that we would never have been able to share if it weren't for this. So I think, we're looking at ways that we can use our resources and our gifts and our talents to return something to the community that's supporting us.
Just to back up for a second and explain a couple of the shows that Genevieve just mentioned, the Elephant in the Room series, it's something the NHTP puts on to address community issues. They will do a play reading followed by a discussion based on topics like gun violence, opioid addiction, eating disorder, body image stuff. Meanwhile, the Fairy House tours are, pretty much exactly what they sound like, so about as different as you could get from Elephant in the Room. 250 little fairy houses are created by local artists, and they are displayed in Prescott Park and Strawberry Bank in downtown Portsmouth. There are guided tours and performances. It is an entity distinct from the New Hampshire Theatre Project, but they are a partner organization. And while I'm here, in a second, Catherine's going to talk about something called Solo Stage, which is happening for the Theatre Project's 2021 season. 3 artists are developing solo shows, mostly because the theater has such a limited capacity for a socially distanced audience that you can't really have a significant cast in any of your plays. But the performances will also be live streamed, and in the meantime, people who donate to the show get access to their development in progress, blog updates from the creators, that sort of thing.
And when people to me personally, well, how are you doing? How's NHTP? And I said, well, the 4 of us who are on salary still have our jobs, but the 70 artists that we would have hired between March and August didn't get that work.
We are investing in our artists, and we're saying through a variety of different ways, what are you waiting for? What's the opportunity you always wished you had? And so through Solo Stage, we are commissioning 3 new plays centered around the work of solo artists, stories that have broad appeal, but also are asking an interesting question of our community or can bring up interesting topics, and but are also opportunities for families to come together to see a show together, or for other groups to form to come and see work. And so by investing in the artists, we then invest in the community, because Stephanie Lazenby is writing a piece about what it means to belong, and you can come and share that experience and see that piece of theatre and maybe feel that belonging in this really challenging time. You can help discover belonging as Stephanie does through the piece. And so that's the other way that we serve this our community. And whereas that might have been people who could come to our 50-seat Black Box Theatre in Portsmouth, New Hampshire last season, this year we now have the opportunity to reach so many more people that we can really stand as New Hampshire Theatre Project. And our goal this year is to serve more individuals in the state, because we do see ourselves as a statewide organisation. We have always toured, we have always been across this state, but really is a time through through the opportunity of virtual programming that we will be able to perhaps meet more audience members than we were. We don't know whether we'll be able to do that, but that's one of those, what were we waiting for? We needed someone to give us the nudge to say, yeah, let's really think about how we can serve more people. But we do think that by investing in artists in the first place to make the work, to go on their creative journeys, and to have that door fully open for people to experience that creative journey, then we'll be able to serve more people. And then hopefully that grows as well. More opportunities for people, not just our resident and company artists, but artists that we don't know yet. We've never had an opportunity to meet, or they live elsewhere in the state, but we want to be working with them as actors or writers or stage managers or designers. So a lot of what we're focused on now is opening the door, and not just to our building, because actually we can't necessarily do that for the numbers that we want to in the moment, but how else do we make sure that door is open? And asking ourselves, well, what are we waiting for? Why are we not making sure that as many people as possible can experience the joys and the power that theatre has to offer?
That's today's episode. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Some of the music in this episode is from my brother, Morgan Little. Thank you, Morgan. I also want to thank Genevieve and Catherine, not just for being artists that I deeply respect and admire, but also for being like the easiest to edit interview subjects in the world. You barely got to do anything with these two. It's a dream. We'll be back soon. Stay safe. Vote if you can. Have a good day.